Ladies, gentlemen, and Nightfarers of all ages, there are a lot of different parts of becoming powerful in Elden Ring Nightreign, but one of the ways to become consistently powerful between each expedition is to simply use a good setup of 3 relics for whichever character you're using at the time. Having 3 relics to begin with is a power spike over not having any of them, but there is a massive spectrum to the value of relics, and having 3 perfect relics for your character will just make you way stronger for every single run. So today, instead of talking about specific combo builds that require hefty RNG and stuff like that, I thought it would be a good idea to instead focus on the individual relic effects themselves, and simply go over which of the effects are best for each Nightfarer in general, in order to help you figure out what your best combination of relics might be from your own personal collection of RNG, as aside from the guaranteed drop relics and the shop purchase relics, everything else is different for every individual player. For each of the Nightfarers then, they have effects that are unique to them, so we will talk about which of those are actually worth taking for each Nightfarer and why, but we'll also talk about the more generic effects that might be better on some of them than others. But before we go into specific Nightfarer stuff, I want to talk about a relic effect that you want for literally every character as much as you possibly can. Most of the really powerful generic relic effects only apply to some characters rather than all of them, but attack power permanently increased for each Evergaol prisoner defeated is absolutely busted strong in the current balance of the game. This bonus gives you 5% increased attack power for each Evergaol you complete, which in comparison to most other relic effect bonuses, even 5% increased attack power that scales to level 15 is already quite good. But the fact that if you get 2 Evergaols, it grows to a 10% attack power increase, which is more than any other permanent attack power increase effect you can get from a relic. 3 Evergaols is 15%, 4 Evergaols is 20%, and while 4 Evergaols does take a fair bit of effort to do, it's very much something that you can accomplish regularly if you make it a major goal of your expedition. And especially if all 3 of your party members are running this same effect, you all have a good reason to focus on Evergaols, not to mention that there is now a guaranteed relic from the collector's signboard for 3 sovereign sigils that has this effect guaranteed on a yellow relic, along with a guaranteed stone sword key in possession at the start of expedition, which again means if all 3 party members have this relic, you can guaranteed do 3 Evergaols without even looking for a key during the run, and have a guaranteed 15% attack power boost on all 3 of you. And honestly, I've spent way too much time in this video talking about one singular relic effect, but it really is just super busted, and I needed people to be more aware of it. That said, there is one more generic effect that I do need to touch on. It's not quite as universal, and it's also relatively more known, but it applies to every character you intend to play with a melee weapon. It is partial HP restoration from post-damage attacks. This is the rally mechanic from Bloodborne, it's the Millennia Great Rune effect from Elden Ring, it's the ability to restore your health by hitting an enemy after you get hit, a reward for aggression after taking damage. This relic effect just makes it active permanently, and that is incredible for survivability, especially when just plowing through smaller enemies early on in a run, where you can basically ignore most of their just general tip damage by healing through their attacks using this effect. This effect works with every melee weapon in the game, but it doesn't seem to work with ranged weapons like bows or spells, meaning sorceries and incantations. So if you are using a melee weapon mainly, you almost definitely want this effect among your relic choices. It is incredibly potent and very high priority. This is one that, like the previous option, you can roll on random relics, but it does have a guaranteed spawn option in the Small Jar Bazaar shop after you have defeated the Night Aspect expedition for the first time. Moving on to character-specific stuff then, for Wylder's specific relic effects, the best one, as far as I'm concerned, is follow-up attacks possible when using character skill. This lets you perform a light attack after the grapple hook for a powerful fire attack that also gives you an added fire affinity effect on your weapon for like 20 seconds afterwards. The attack itself covers a lot of distance, it can be quite evasive, it has a fair bit of stagger damage as well, and in general, it just makes your character skill a lot more offensively useful. This is a great effect against any fire weak enemy especially, and can be applied to any greatsword that you find, though it is locked to only greatswords. The next best effect, in my opinion, is art activation spreads fire in an area. This makes your ultimate leave behind a patch of fire on the floor, and especially against any boss that is relatively large or just is immobile enough to stand inside of it for the full duration, it does add a really nice extra chunk of damage for free at the end of your ultimate skill. Then Wylder has 2 more that are also at least decent. He has Art Gauge greatly filled when ability is activated. This gives you around 18% of your ultimate Art Gauge charged after you trigger your passive effect, the Cheat Death. You can activate this once each time that you visit a site of grace, and so if you really want to, you can purposefully trigger Cheat Death to gain a bit of ult charge on repeat. But this one is definitely much less good and more niche than the other 2. The final unique Wylder one also has some use, being +1 additional character skill use. I do especially like that one when paired with the follow-up attack after character skill, and when playing solo, having 2 uses of the grappling hook can make you move really fast, but when playing in multiplayer, that just means that you'll be separated from the group, and generally speaking, unless you have another relic effect worth taking on that same relic, I don't really like picking a relic exclusively for +1 character skill use on Wylder. The first 2 are great, the other 2 effects a bit more niche. As for generic relic effects that are particularly good on Wylder, you still want Evergaol and the post-damage attack effects, but past that, things like the old Pocket Watch FP regeneration on successive hits can make a lot of Ashes of War essentially free to use. And because Wylder has the most varied potential because of his attributes, it means that if you find any weapon in the game that has a good Ash of War on it, and if you have the old Pocket Watch equipped, you have that FP restoration effect, you can likely make great use out of the weapon's Ash of War. Physical attack up as well will affect the majority of your damage, even if you use elemental affinity weapons, as melee weapons are weighted more towards physical damage in general. As well, ultimate Art Gauge +1 to 3 is great, with this being 5% up to 10% increased ultimate Art Gauge generation speed in general, as well as defeating enemies fills more of the Art Gauge, will give you a flat 5% gauge generation per enemy that you kill. Both of these are potentially useful just because of how strong the ultimate is in general, and having faster ultimate generation is quite good as a result. But at this point, we're pretty far down the priority list of relics. Next up then, let's talk about Guardian, who is much more specific compared to the other characters, but also relatively straightforward. For his character-specific relic effects, increased duration for character skill is awesome for stun locking every smaller enemy in the game in every expedition, but it still does pretty much nothing to any threatening enemy like a boss. Reflect a portion of damage received when ability is activated is fantastic. This allows you to generate aggro while actively guarding and do damage without having to actually do a guard poke, so you can do damage without ever leaving your safety turtle mode position. As well, it makes sure that the enemy will continue to attack you instead of attacking other people, because you are still doing damage to them even though you're just blocking. Slowly restores nearby allies' HP while art is active, is great for a more support role Guardian. Generally, I'm not a massive fan of the concept of a support build in this game, as I think the most supportive you can be is just being a third self-sufficient strong player. But if you want to go full into support Guardian, then going full guard, full ultimate charge, and then this effect just lets you have a fairly frequent group revive that also fully heals all of your party. So not bad, but definitely niche. Then we have creates whirlwind effect when charging halberd attacks, and that is pretty garbage in my opinion. Honestly, it's just not very useful, especially as it does not stack with extended character skill duration, and you aren't really incentivized to do charged halberd attacks in any way on Guardian to begin with. As for the more generic effects, again, attack increase from Evergaol and post-damage attacks, restore HP is always great because he is a melee character, but specifically guard counter is given a boost based on current HP is an extremely good effect for Guardian. You can combine that with general improved guard counters as an effect, which is also a 15% bonus to guard counter damage to begin with, but the reason that the HP scaling guard counter damage is so good on Guardian is that it scales off of your flat health value, not off of percent of maximum health, meaning the more HP you have, the larger the damage bonus you get from this effect. And Guardian not only is the character, of course, designed to be played with a shield, but also has the highest HP scaling of any Nightfarer in the game. So this is just an extremely natural synergy to up his damage significantly compared to how he is by default. Threat generation while guarding is also a good effect, but you shouldn't need that if you have the damage reflect when using ability effect, which is just generally better. Other than that, kills restore ultimate art gauge and general ultimate art gauge generation boosts are also great for the supportive nature of the ultimate for the character, and stamina recovers with each successful attack can make guard poking feel a bit more reasonable, but again, we've gotten pretty low down on the priority list of effects. Next up then we have Ironeye, the bowman, who is again a bit unique compared to the others in how you want to build him. His best character specific effect in my opinion is +1 additional character skill use. This may not seem crazy on the surface because reapplying a mark to an already marked enemy just refreshes the timer and stops the damage buildup pop. But the main usage of this is twofold. First, the ability has tons of iframes when you use it, and Ironeye is squishy as hell by default, so getting a second usage of an ability that lets you go fully immortal for a couple of seconds lets you use that ability more defensively instead of purely for applying the mark. But then secondarily, if you are fighting multiple enemies that are a little bit spread out from each other, this lets you apply marks to both of them, or however many there are, and do it separately instead of only being able to use one mark every once in a while. As well, boost thrusting counterattacks after executing art is another pretty solid one for Ironeye. This one increases your thrusting counterattack damage by 20% for 30 seconds after you use the ult, and this counts for arrows that hit an enemy that is in the middle of an attack animation. The only downside to this one is that it has a lower uptime, but when it is active, it is a pretty great buff. Then for the other two options, Art Charge activation adds poison effect, will apply poison just straight up to most enemies if it is their first poison, because it's like 300 poison buildup, and this is great to just have as a passive source of poison on anything that can be affected by poison. Then extends duration of weak point, makes the duration of the weak point effect go from 17.5 seconds up to 20 seconds. So it honestly is just an extremely minor increase. It's better than nothing, but having two marks, in my opinion, is way better than having that very slight duration extension. As for the generic relics that benefit Ironeye specifically, again, the Evergaol attack boost is great. Improved bow attack power as an effect gives you 6% increased damage with bows in general, which is of course great for Ironeye. Then for Ironeye, I'm also a huge fan of the unique effects on the Healstore relic Knight of the Lord, the one that gives a random affinity attack when swapping weapons, and a damage boost when doing so too. This adds flat affinity damage, and Ironeye's flat damage on the bow is relatively low to begin with, so the relative boost of this flat affinity damage is quite big. It lets you have access to whatever affinity your enemy might be weak to as well, which is quite great, and if you have a relic with HP restored upon thrusting counterattack, this is actually one of the few HP restore effects that is percentage based instead of a flat health gain. So if you hit thrusting counterattacks relatively frequently, which you should just by passively playing this character, it is a pretty solid survivability option as well. Other than that, as you are plinking away consistently from a distance with a bow, starting armament has status of various kinds, whichever you prefer, is quite good too, as applying something like bleed or poison from a distance is just a very nice consistent bit of bonus damage. After that we have Duchess, and for her character specific relic effects, she has two really good ones, one okay one and one very niche one. Improved character skill attack power is fantastic. By default, Restage as a character skill applies 50% of the damage done within the recent timing window, and this relic effect raises that to 60% instead of 50%, which is essentially a 20% improvement to this skill. This is arguably the strongest part of Duchess's kit, so improving it is quite good. The other great one then is Dagger Chain Attack's reprise event upon enemies, and this is essentially a bonus mini version of your character skill. The negative is that it locks you harder into daggers specifically, and it does require a full chain combo to trigger, but especially if you are power stancing two daggers together, which is a good choice for Duchess anyways, you can get the chain attack relatively short, get the finisher, and trigger this essentially free but less potent version of your character skill. It's worth noting this bonus restage is not affected by the previous relic effect we talked about. It does not increase the damage of the chain attack restage, that only affects the proper character skill. And it also seems that this version of the restage from the chain attacks is closer to 25% of the damage in status and stagger and such retriggering, rather than 50% like the normal proper character skill. But this chain attack restage does otherwise work like the normal one. It boosts whatever your allies are doing whenever it triggers as well. The third unique character relic effect is defeating enemies while art is active ups attack power. This specifically increases your attack power by 15% for 30 seconds after an enemy is killed during the duration of your ultimate skill. This does have some use, and it makes your ultimate a bit more useful offensively speaking, but given how infrequently you are likely to use your ultimate, it's hard to justify dedicating a whole relic slot to it. But if you have it on a relic that has otherwise great effects alongside, then it's not a bad effect to have. Then the final one becomes difficult to spot and silenced footsteps after landing a critical from behind. This is essentially minor stealth after getting a backstab. This can be convenient for clearing out groups of enemies while playing solo, or just for avoiding threat and aggro when playing in a group, but it is just super minor, really, honestly, and given that most threatening enemies in the game can't even be backstabbed to begin with, it just has a very niche application. As for specifically great generic relic effects on Duchess, the standard Evergaol attack damage booster, again, fantastic. The post-damage attacks restore HP as well, because you'll be playing her in melee most likely, and then specifically the next highest priority past those is giving yourself any sort of status application on your dagger. Knight of the Miasma as a relic from Caligo gives you Chilling Mist as your starting weapon Ash of War, and increased damage to frostbitten targets and stealth on frostbite, so that's an excellent example of a relic that gives you a whole bunch of status-based synergies, letting you get a bunch of benefits from your incredibly quick attack speed. Other options are any of the starting armament has poison or bleed or whatever type of status effects, or other starting armament Ash of War effects that also leave a status aura on your blade after the fact. Past that, FP regen on successive attacks from the old pocket watch is fantastic on Duchess as well if you plan on using Ashes of War, because you have incredibly quick and long attack chains that let you regen quite a bit of FP from this effect. And similarly, the effects that give you stamina regen on successful attacks, as they just let you attack for longer, and importantly leave you with more stamina to dodge with when you are greedily attacking maybe a bit longer than you should be. Next up then we have the Raider, who actually only has 2 character exclusive relic effects. There are a couple of effects in the pool that activate for anyone when they are near his ultimate, but those aren't only for Raider. That said, his specific ones are damage taken while using character skill, improves attack power and stamina. This specifically is 10% increased attack power and 20% increased stamina for 20 seconds after triggering the effect. Generally you want to get hit while using the skill regardless, so this is just a massively powerful relic effect for Raider. The other unique effect he has is Duration of Ultimate Art Extended, which makes the totem last for 30 seconds instead of 20 seconds. This isn't bad by any means, but it's definitely something I would consider the second tier in comparison to the other unique effect for sure. As for generic relic effects that have specific benefit for Raider, the classic standard Evergaol attack increase relic and the post-damage attacks restore HP, both of these are absolutely fantastic. But there is also an effect for relics that is taking attacks improves attack power, and this gives you 15% increased damage for 10 seconds after you take damage of any kind. This includes things like tiny ticks of fire on the floor, which is great for proccing this effect, or for Raider specifically, it of course includes any time that you use your character skill and get hit during the animation, which then stacks on top of the other character specific relic effect to give you a massive damage boost anytime you successfully trigger the parry part of your character skill, which is just something that you want to be doing as frequently as possible regardless. Then there's also stuff like character skill cooldown reduction is fantastic for Raider because his character skill is a lot of his power other than, you know, just big weapons, and there's stuff like increased poise or increased stance damage while wielding 2 weapons for your inevitable power stance colossal weapons, which is pretty fantastic too. After that we've got Revenant and her character specific relic effects. Strengthen family and allies while ultimate art is active is a 25% damage boost for 30 seconds after using your ultimate. Importantly, this applies to all of your summons and any party members in the area, but it does not apply to Revenant herself. This is something that buffs other people, but not you, and yet it is still a fantastic buff effect with a decent duration on it, at least if you are playing multiplayer. Revenant also gets power up while fighting alongside family, which is relatively good if you know what it actually does. This gives you a permanent 1 HP per second regen as long as Helen is deployed, it gives you 10% increased damage while Frederick is deployed, or it gives you 20% damage negation while Sebastian is deployed, so your summon that you have out changes the buff that you get, and you can purposefully swap family members around depending on which buff you want active at any given time. The Ghost Flame Explosion on Ultimate Art Activation effect is okay, it does decent damage, but that's about it really. And then Expend Own HP to fully heal nearby allies when activating art is another one that's just sort of okay, but given that it is a mass revival ultimate anyways, it's sort of going hard overkill on a support role in my personal opinion. Then we have the generic relics that specifically benefit Revenant. Again, with the Evergaol attack boost relic being as good as it is of course also going to be good for Revenant, but then the next priority for her, in my opinion, is Wraith Calling Bell in possession at the start of Expedition. The Wraith Calling Bell is an extremely effective damage to FP ratio option to use as like a main weapon, and Revenant is the only character that cannot scale properly with most melee weapons because she only really scales with Faith, but also she doesn't have an inbuilt method of FP regeneration like the Recluse does, and so your best way to counter the FP problem is to just use your FP as efficiently as possible, and the Wraith Calling Bell is fantastic for that purpose. You can find it through RNG during an expedition, of course, if you want to rely on luck, but you could also just put it guaranteed on a relic from the very start. Aside from that, on the note of FP, the next priority, as far as I'm concerned, would be to maximize your FP pool as much as possible. You can do this super effectively with the new guaranteed Sovereign Seal relic, which is 50 bonus maximum FP when you have 3 or more staves in your inventory, and 18% bonus maximum FP when you release a Sorcerer's Rise mechanism. And it's worth noting that effect does stack for each Sorcerer's Rise you complete in a run, and these two effects stuck together on a single relic is insanely effective for FP stacking. Next up we have Recluse, and for her character-specific relic effects, these are actually all pretty good, though one of them is only good for defensive reasons. Collecting Affinity Residue activates Terra Magica is incredible if you have any plans at all of using actual proper magic damage, which is most sorceries in the game, so you probably will if you're playing this character. This increases your magic damage significantly when you are in the circle and for a couple of seconds after stepping out of it. This is an insane damage bump whenever you activate it, which it does practically passively and consistently while you are otherwise playing normally. Then there is also Suffer Blood Loss and Increase Attack Power upon art activation. This makes you lose 20% of your health to a Blood Loss proc to gain around 15% damage increase for 30 seconds. The 20% health loss isn't a massive negative because part of the effect of your ult is you heal on each hit against the marked enemies anyways, so you'll probably recoup that relatively quickly, and the damage increase is just good in general. Not to mention that if you have anything that triggers bonuses from blood loss, like the Lord of Blood's Exaltation Talisman, this effect lets you apply it manually and purposefully whenever you use your ultimate. Then the third exclusive effect is activating ultimate art raises maximum HP. This is a 30% bonus to your maximum health for 30 seconds after using your ultimate art. This is great when used with the previous effect on the Bone-like Stone, which Remembrance Relic that has both of them, as it basically just offsets the bleed damage from the previous thing too, but it also just gives you a lot more leeway to take risks during your ultimate's duration, which is when you want to be risky, absolutely for sure. As for the generic relic effects that work well with Recluse, again, the Evergaol relic is great on every single character, even one that doesn't use melee weapons, it doesn't matter. But then your next priority outside of that, and outside of the character-specific effects, of course, too, is pretty much just getting as much FP as possible, just like for Revenant, with the guaranteed Sovereign Sigil relic, again, being absolutely insane for Recluse. 50 bonus maximum FP from the first effect, 18% bonus max FP per Sorcerer's Rise from the second effect, and then it also just comes with magic attack power up, which I would say is a pretty solid other effect for this character too. Then our final character to talk about today is Executor, and he's got 3 character exclusive relic effects. While character skill is active, unlocking use of Cursed Sword restores HP. When this triggers, which is after multiple parries in a row, it restores a flat 100 health. It's not great, it's not totally useless, but you don't really want to choose a relic just for the sake of having this. It's just not strong enough, even being a survivability focused relic. Roaring restores HP while art is active is one that is, on the other hand, deceptively better than you might think, but only from a support perspective. This makes your Roar, while in your ultimate, which is your L1, heal 15% HP, both to yourself and any allies that are nearby you, which is an important part of it most people don't expect. This can be quite good, especially on the tougher Night Lords as a result, where your party might run out of healing eventually, and you can just go wolf mode on cooldown to bring everyone up to full health health, but it is still definitely a very niche use for this effect for sure. Then the third unique effect for this character is character skill boosts attack, but attacking drains HP. This increases cursed sword damage by 8%, but takes 10 health from you anytime that you attack with it. 10 health isn't a massive amount individually, but you also usually won't focus much on the actual damage from cursed sword, so this is just something that I would generally say ends up being more of a negative than it is a positive, and as a result, personally I don't use any of Executor's character-specific relic effects in my personal setup. That said, let's talk about generic relic effects that are particularly good on Executor. As usual, the Evergaol attack increase relic is just nuts. You want that above all else on every character. And then, as Executor is a melee attacking character, the partial HP restoration upon post-damage attacks is also quite important for his survivability. But then from there, you have some choices. One option is to lean really hard into statuses, as Executor has an S rank in arcane scaling, which means he applies statuses better than any other Nightfarer does. You can do this by using things like the Knight of the Miasma guaranteed relic we talked about earlier to get Chilling Mist on your starting katana and make it apply frostbite. You can use Knight of the Wise as a relic as well to put poison on your starting weapon. Your starting weapon can have bleed buildup by default on certain relics, it can have poison by default from other relics. There's just plenty of things you can do, even stuff like Ashes of War, like you can get Seppuku as an Ash of War on your starting katana for a mega bleed option right from the start. The specific choice of status that you use is up to you, but Executor is absolutely nasty in a status-focused build setup. The last real option for him in my mind then is stuff like the old pocket watch with FP restored on successive attacks, but that entirely depends on if you find a weapon during the run that makes that effect pay off for you. So it's a bit more of an RNG related choice. And then I suppose anything that makes his ultimate art gauge charge faster will give you more frequent access to your full heal from using the ultimate, which is just a nice option for some quality of life. That just about does it for today then, everyone. The best relic effects for each Nightfarer in Elden Ring Nightreign, not shown as specific relics or specific vessel loadouts completed, but just going over which effects are good for each character in particular and why, with the idea that this will hopefully help you create your best loadout from whatever relics and whatever effects you have in your own personal collection, and make every one of your runs to follow just that little bit easier. I hope you all enjoyed this then, and good luck with the next upcoming hard mode expedition as well. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.